Hi guys, welcome to yet another episode of Matchpoint Paradox. This is Sportstar's cricket podcast. We are in the final installment of our World Cup 2023 campaign reviews, and the last two teams that are left to be spoken about are India and Australia. And to do that, joining me, Lavanya, in this episode is my colleague Amol Karhadkar. Hi Amol, how are you doing after the World Cup?
Tip top, Lavanya. Couldn't have asked for a better finish to the World Cup, right?
Mm-hmm. You seem to be in high spirits, but understandably, a lot of people, especially in our country, who watched that match after the kind of campaign India had, were expecting the men in blue to go all the way, but it was not to be. Amol, I want to actually begin with just your opening thoughts about that final, just how the game unfolded, how the teams turned up, and then we'll dive into each of their campaigns individually. Can you just take me through your opening thoughts about that final?
See, everything that India dreaded right through the World Cup, that they'll have one terrible game. Okay. That game, unfortunately for the Indian team, turned out to be the big final. And from Australia's perspective, they hardly put a foot wrong. Barring the first 10 overs, they hardly put a foot wrong. So, with the manner in which the game unfolded, I was not at all surprised with Australia actually just having a walk in the park, so to say, in the stadium that matters.
Absolutely. Now, let's just look at these two teams in particular before we get to what happened in the final. I'm not going to say both had opposite kind of campaigns, but India had an unbeaten run in the group stage, even in the semi-final. Australia started off with two losses, the first of which came at the hands of India in Chennai, and then had another loss and then resurrected their campaign to then go unbeaten until the final. How did you sort of look at both these campaigns? Did you see much difference in maybe how they went about their respective runs in the tournament?
The first half wasn't exactly similar, even though Australia had gotten off to, or rather gotten back to winning a World Cup game.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they were far from convincing till the midway, but in latter half was quite similar, especially after, as in, see, the only exception was the manner in which Australia defeated Afghanistan.
Yeah.
India didn't have any such close game. In fact, this whole tournament is the first ever World Cup which hasn't witnessed optimum number of overs, be it 120 or 100,
Mm-hmm.
to have been bowled in a single game. Okay. So, Australia had that last ball thriller as such, although the match did not go the last ball. Uh, India did not have any such issues. India were hardly being stretched by any opposition. After that, Australia's opening match, wherein they were found reeling at 2 for 3 or 3 for 2, depending on your nationality.
Mm-hmm.
Just to be safe, they were 3 wickets down for 2 runs, chasing 200.
Mm-hmm.
And Virat Kohli was dropped by Mitchell Marsh. So, Mitchell Marsh would anyway have been the player of the tournament. Didn't matter which team won the final. Okay.
Yeah.
So, once India had that kind of a start after they actually gaped out of that hole, the only time they were stretched was twice by New Zealand in the league stage and in the semis. That too, not till the very end, but there were passages of play when India were not sure that they are actually uh, having the game in the bag. Otherwise, Australia had those close games, but still, in terms of results and in terms of consistency of the whole unit, yes, it was quite similar, because once you found your winning touch, you never let go of it. That's the biggest similarity from my perspective.
Right. That's a nice way to put it. If I have to look at the Indian campaign itself, right, we'll get to Australia, but we have to look at the Indian campaign, which now is being dissected left, right, and center on social media with pundits, with former players. Everyone has an opinion. Can you compare maybe this run in this World Cup edition to what we've seen in the editions past? Has there been any differences? Has this Indian side looked a little more formidable? We did this one video with you, Amol, right before the final, and I will plug that in the description of this episode, where we spoke about um, there not having been another instance of all 11 members of a playing 11 being in form or contributing productively towards the team's cause. So, how would you compare and contrast this team with maybe teams of the past?
Yeah, besides that, I personally feel seldom has Indian team been so dominant right through a major tournament. The closest I can think of is 2003, when they had a terrible start, just like Australia's start to this campaign. India lost convincingly to Australia, was scratchy to say the least against Netherlands, and then found their winning touch. But still, they were not dominant as such, even though they actually cruised to the final in 2003. 2011, despite winning the tournament, despite being hot favorites, they were not dominant. Here, all through the league stage, I had a feeling that all India was humming in the park was where's the competition. Okay, there was no team which actually looked like beating India. That's why in that video that you just mentioned, I had used this term that it will require Australia to be on its top and India actually letting themselves down. A combination of both would only see India losing. Something similar happened in the final, despite the result. Since we as a nation are extremely result oriented, anything less than 95% is a failure. So when it comes to cricket parlance, anything less than a trophy is a failure. That medal is deserving. That medal is not worthy of what India actually ended up achieving. So despite the team not losing the final, all I can say is let's not lose faith in this lot.
Absolutely. And that's something that we have to speak about a lot, because when losses come about, somehow people seem to forget that even losing is a part of a game, isn't it? We talk about sports and sportsmanship and everything, but sometimes victory is the only thing some people can see. With this Indian side itself, Amol, one really important aspect or like a characteristic trait for this team has been the essence that Rahul Dravid and Rohit Sharma have brought to this side. What do you make now that we know, at least on paper, as to what we knew before this World Cup? Rahul Dravid's tenure is done. What did you make of his time with this side? Because he had a very rocky start to life as head coach of a senior team. A lot of people said, this is not under 19 cricket. You can't. It doesn't happen that easily here. We saw that T20 World Cup campaign. He had to sort of deal with the aftermath of that. He had dealt with some losses along the way. That Asia Cup win sort of covered things up a little bit before a very high scrutiny World Cup came about. So, what do you make of his time with the Indian team, irrespective of what happens going forward, whether he gets an extension, whether he wants an extension or not?
All through the tournament, we were saying that Rohit Sharma and Rahul Dravid as the player coach combo will be judged only on November 19th, because their whole tenure. And remember the last 2 years, it was in the first week of November 2021 was Rahul Dravid appointed as India's head coach. And in the following week, Rohit Sharma was formally appointed as India's captain for T20s. And in the next 2 to 3 months, he took over in every format officially. Not that he hadn't led India earlier, but with Rohit Sharma's fitness ruling him out for a lot of Test cricket, uh, his workload being managed for majority of one days and T20I series. These last 2 years have 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 to be judged predominantly as Rahul Dravid's era. Okay, it was Rahul Dravid's team. Uh, for the World Cup, it became Rohit Sharma's team. Okay,
Yeah.
so I feel the whole tenure has been patchy. Okay, yes, you made it to the World Test Championship final after struggling to get there. Okay, but you were expected to win in South Africa during the Test series. You did not. You botched up an Asia Cup a big time. You the ICC trophy drought. So a lot of people, as in Lavanya, you and I, we both know, especially on social media, there are these Rohitians and Viratians, whatever
Yeah.
that is. Hopefully, all of them are Indians or men in blueians.
Yeah.
But they are, a lot of them are now pointing it out that everyone was saying that a great player will not make a great captain, or a great player does not necessarily mean that the team will win the trophy. What has happened now? Okay,
Hmm.
okay, they might be spewing venom at Rohit Sharma, but there is a point. If you look at it objectively, that yes, Rohit Sharma was the best captain India have had since Mahendra Singh Dhoni. He still is the best captain. Okay, Rahul Dravid's coaching tenure and Rahul Dravid's coaching philosophy, a lot needs to be debated. I would be surprised whether, I would be surprised if Rahul Dravid continues as India head coach. Although on record he has said that he has not yet given a thought. Okay.
Hmm.
But all said and done, that is why November 19 was paramount both for Rahul Dravid and Rohit Sharma. Rohit Sharma, because he could have just stamped his legacy. He has done it all at the IPL. He could not be fit for the WTC final.
Hmm.
Here, World Cup, what does World Cup mean for Rohit Sharma? We all know that. We don't need to get into that.
Yeah.
So, with that as the background, and in all likelihood, this is going to be the only ODI World Cup that Rohit Sharma would have captained India in. Okay. If he lasts as a player till 2027, it will be a miracle. Let's not get into Rohit, the captain, come 2027. See, had India won on November 19, no, Rohit and Rahul Dravid would have enjoyed the high for at least 15 months, because in the next 15 months, India are supposed to play 9 ODIs. Okay, so whatever happens, November 19 is not going to fade out of the memory.
Like, I want to actually pick on something that you said. You said in a lot of ways, the kind of brand of coaching that he brings hasn't been convincing in a lot of passages, isn't it, during his coaching tenure? What did you exactly mean by that? Is it something about, is it the way workloads were managed, or is it team combinations, or just how preparation went ahead? Is that what you're hinting at?
My simple point is, when it comes to the senior international team in any sport, how will a coach slash manager slash captain be judged? By results, right? And all that India has been striving for in the last decade is that ICC championship in some format at least, right? That's
Right.
not happening. Overall, you botched up one Asia Cup, you won one Asia Cup. At home, you continued the great tradition of tinkering with the pitches to suit the home side. Not just in ODIs, even during the World Cup we saw. In the World Cup, it did not work out. South Africa Test Series, you lost an ODI series in Bangladesh, a T20 series in West Indies. So, and plus there were a lot of critics, okay, who continued to go after Rahul Dravid's periodic breaks, despite a coach not having had to be around during the IPL. So him choosing to rest for a few series, I don't know whether, see, Rahul Dravid, to be fair to him, and I have huge respect for him, in his 2 years as India head coach, beyond the press conferences, he has not done a single interview with any single media person. Okay, because he feels that his primary job is to coach the team. If he does one interview, in India, he'll have to end up doing 20 interviews, right?
Right.
So he says, I can't spare so much of time from my schedule for the team. Okay, huge respect for that. So we don't know whether he took the breaks to set in motion the next plan of action, the next leadership group, the next coaching group. We don't know that. That could also be true. But the optics give a sense that he wasn't committed. And to be fair to him, my simple point is, he was an exceptional coach when it comes to grooming talent at the A level, where
Right.
you have to, or even under 19s,
Mhm.
where one, you have to improve their skill set, two, you have to imbibe discipline into them, and three, you have to test whether they are ready for the big league or how to get them ready. But when it comes to being in charge of the senior team, international team, or the main team, uh, it's only the results that count, right? Processes have to be set in motion, but the results actually is the only yardstick through which anyone in the leadership group is going to be judged. He could not deliver results for Rajasthan Royals and Delhi IPL franchise.
Mhm.
Whether he has been successful with the Indian team or not, I think that's highly debatable. I am not convinced that he has been the best India coach. I feel there is hardly anything to choose between his tenure and Ravi Shastri's.
Okay, that's interesting. But their styles have been massively contrasting, isn't it? Just the kind of vibe that they bring to the team. The Virat Shastri era was a very aggressive era, and this somehow seems to be about a sense of family, a sense of togetherness, a sense of we are all in this together. Like you said, actually, you had pointed out in that video that there was a sense of security that a lot of the seniors got, which for a while even Rahul Dravid did not have in the later half, like in the end, maybe towards the twilight years of his own career. Is that something that might be a positive that we could look at from this combination?
Yes, big positive, because a lot of people, it's like, see, not too many will remember that Virat Kohli gave up Test captaincy after Rahul Dravid became, or yes, he gave up Test captaincy after Rahul Dravid became head coach. India hadn't played a Test series with that combo, but Virat was technically still the India captain. The moment he was removed as ODI captain, he gave up Test captaincy. So, and Virat was going through a terrible form for a prolonged period of time. So, a lot had expected that possibly there will be pressure on Virat Kohli to give security to every senior, starting with Virat Kohli. Then be it Ashwin, be it Shami. And the good thing about Rahul Dravid and Rohit Sharma as a combo, again, I don't know who deserves more credit. I know how Rohit operates as the captain. Okay, so in so many ways, they complemented each other. And let's treat them as one unit for this topic at least.
Right.
To actually give security to seniors, to ensure that the dressing room did not get poisoned. See, a lot of times when seniors have to sit out, no, it's never a happy dressing room.
Yeah.
This never happened to this lot. To give Virat Kohli the credit, in the latter half of his captaincy tenure, he managed to do that. He managed to have a calm R. Ashwin. But till then, most of the seniors used to actually be extremely unhappy about being made to sit out time and again and all. Okay. But that's not happening. That's not happened rather over the last 2 years. That credit we have to give Rohit Sharma and Rahul Dravid, but that cannot be the sole yardstick to judge them.
Right. Because you brought up the seniors thing, right? And because, I mean, one of the bones of contention in this final also, given the kind of optics that we were made to see, was this whether Ashwin would be in or out. And we know that at least Ashwin has said it in a couple of interviews that Rohit had told him that he would be in the scheme of things and he had the confidence of his captain. Why then did we not see, or rather, why do you think we didn't see Ravichandran Ashwin both at the WTC final? After all of that build up, we saw him sitting on the sidelines. Same in this World Cup final as well. What gives you that kind of a decision? Maybe when you've seen an instance of this already happening in a big game.
Ashwin not playing the WTC final was more surprising for me than him not featuring in the World Cup final. Like I've maintained all through this week, Ashwin was never going to play the World Cup final. No Indian team has won a major one-day match without three pace bowlers. Okay. And to play Ashwin in place of Surya, who ended up doing nothing to a lot of extent. But it would have been a huge risk to have Jadeja at 6, Ashwin at 7, and then the long tail, right?
Right.
So that was never going to work. The Ashwin pattern, the back and all that people saw from the press box or from the ground was nothing but tactical. Okay. India may have just taken a chance to give a sense to Australia that he's playing so that in case they make any changes to their combination, it could help India. These were all tactics, nothing else. Okay. Uh, as for not including Ashwin for the key matches, in test matches overseas, that's been more of an issue for me. Yes, Ashwin was hinted the moment Rohit took over in 2021 that he wants Ashwin for 2022 and 2023. If he wasn't to be used, why was he included? When you have two spinners who are going so well, Ashwin wasn't really required to step into either of them's shoe. So Ashwin was the best reserve India had.
Right. Right. Puzzling questions, which I'm sure will be answered or convoluted over the next couple of days. But when it comes to this sort of side itself, Amol, I mean, we've spoken a lot about the kind of success that India enjoyed in the league stage. You spoke about how New Zealand was perhaps the only team that so much as maybe made India sweat just a little bit in their matches. But I have to ask you about this mind games, potential mind game strategy that they may have employed with this whole Ashwin optics, right? How do you play the mind games game against the country that sort of invented the concept? I mean, nobody knows how to uh, play on the mind the way the Aussies do, right? So, where do you think maybe how do you think that played out? Because we saw Pat Cummins coming out uh, a day and 2 days before the final, very casually. It didn't even look like he was preparing for a game. He came out with his phone, was taking pictures, had some very witty things to say in the press conference. How do you think that build up was perhaps towards this big final?
See, sadly, because of the IPL becoming so big, gone are those days when we would actually see players having a go at each other in the build up to a big match. Be it World Cup final, be it any other big match, that has hardly happened, especially when India is featuring in a match. Okay. The other thing is mind games. It's okay. Australia have invented it, Australia have mastered it, Australia have been employing it forever. That doesn't stop you from having a go at it. So it was fair on India's part, I feel. Okay.
Absolutely, absolutely. But how do you think maybe Australia handled their run up to that final, right? Because there was so much of conversation about the pitch. That pitch has been it's become a little boring and a little redundant at the moment. But there was so much chatter about India choosing a drier wicket, and Australia also. There were very pointed pictures of Pat Cummins going and looking at the field and speaking to the curator and things like that. So, do you think this sort of overwrote what should have otherwise been about your team combinations or figuring out plans for the opponents? Do you think this sort of unnecessarily took the front seat?
See, it Australia actually won the match by rectifying its mistake in Chennai. Not when it comes to how to play in the first innings, primarily about how to read a pitch. After the Chennai game against India, it was quite similar. Black soil, slow turner up front. It was dry. Then on, it settled down under the evening sky. A little bit of dew also helped batters and all. Right.
Right.
So Australia learned the lesson, but India were convinced they had to bat first. Okay. So that's where even tactically Australia was one step ahead of India.
Absolutely. Let's talk about that big final now. So we've been doing Twitter Spaces, right, before these games, and one we did after the game as well. In the one right before the toss, there was somebody on that space who came up and said, Australia has this huge legacy. They've been known to be match winners. They've had some very menacing people, very intimidating people in their cricketing history, but this side is not that. It doesn't have that caliber. They don't have those kind of players who, you'd quake in their presence, or you'd wonder, oh God, how do we maneuver a match when they are around? Which is what a lot of people seem to think at the point. But what is it about Australia that sort of sees them switch on like this in knockout matches? Is it the sense of that do or die that, takes them to another level, or what is it? What, at least in your experience of watching them play, especially in knockouts, in big event knockouts, what do you make of that quality in them, Amol?
Yes, see, despite a lot of people not giving them their due, we should remember the fact that in the last 2 years, they have won the World Championship of each of the three formats. 2021 T20 World Cup champions, 2023 Test champions, now ODI champions. Right?
Yeah.
So just imagine if anyone feels that these guys are not invincible, and still if they are achieving so much, how good should they be? Right? My simple point is it just reflects one, like you said, their never say die attitude. Moreover, the whole sporting culture also comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when you actually start playing competitive sport right from your back. See, we Indians, we start playing gully cricket and we stop at gully cricket only. Okay.
Right.
Most Australians start with some sport in their backyard and continue to play multiple sport at basic competitive level. So they know how to keep on improving, how to win. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That desire possibly, and that whole sporting culture plays a huge role, I feel. And that's why we see in cricket sphere, it is Australians, it is South Africa, more than England, that has been consistent over the last 30 years, right? Because these are the two, and New Zealand again. New Zealand also the same rule applies. New Zealand are overachievers when it comes to World Cups. How do they end up doing it time and again? I for once feel that this sporting culture aspect has to be factored in.
Right, absolutely. Cannot deny that at all. Next year is another opportunity for us to keep discussing sporting culture, given the Olympics is coming as well. But yes, coming back to this final, we had, in India at least, we were talking about a well-oiled machine that was firing from multiple cylinders, right? Like multiple players were stepping up. You had a very on-form performance from the bowlers, the batters, fielding was okay. Everything was fine. It seemed to be clicking. Everything peaked consistently throughout the tournament. But in Australia's case, you had different people pitching in at different times. You had a Maxwell coming into play in one match. You had a Zampa pitching in another match. Travis Head, we've seen him be an absolute force to reckon with in the knockouts. How do you compare and contrast these two styles, Amol, just in terms of how the team got together to construct a win, right? What about this Australian side and all of its individual heroes made it stand out, if it stood out at all to you?
See, we can draw so many parallels, right? The three primary pacers Australia employed and India employed. There won't be too much of a difference in terms of number of wickets taken as a unit, right? Ditto with the two spinners. Don't forget, Glenn Maxwell has been used as a genuine spinner, not as a part-timer and all. Okay.
Yeah.
So Zampa and Maxwell combined, their combined figures will not be too different than Jadeja and Kuldeep's combined figures. So bowling units are actually matching each other. Okay. In terms of batting, India had Surya for most of the tournament. Australia had Inglis for most of the tournament. Quite similar. Okay. Underwhelming cricketers in this format, but the team rates them extremely highly. And the top four are big shots for both the units. KL Rahul was the big difference for me when it came to India. But Australia showed that the top four came to the party when it mattered the most. And in the final, we saw one of the key aspects was every time India were on the cusp of starting to change the gear with the bat, Australia picked a wicket. It wasn't as if India lost a wicket. It was every time it was Australia picking a wicket, and India could not do that in the chase. Although the conditions had changed drastically, considering the reputation that India's bowling had built for itself and deservingly so throughout the tournament. They just could not do it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I have to ask you, we've sort of dealt with Rohit Sharma and what he brings to this Indian team. What do you make of Pat Cummins? I mean, like how we had doubts, or not we, but like how the ecosystem had doubts about Rahul Dravid perhaps coming in and taking control of a team of superstars like this. There were a genuine number of doubts about Pat Cummins and his credentials as captain. He barely had any experience. In fact, he comes into this World Cup also as one of perhaps the captains with least experience in ODIs coming into this tournament, right? And he's taken them to a World Cup. So
Yes, 4 ODIs.
yeah,
4 ODIs have as he had led Australia in 4 ODIs coming into the World Cup. There and when they lost those 2 matches, everyone was saying we knew it. They'll botch it up, right? Now again, most of those who said the same on October 15th are saying post October November 19th that we knew it because it's Australia. Okay, so when Australia appoints Pat Cummins as captain, let's just give it a thought that it is Australia after all. They will not appoint anyone as their captain. They will not take a punt on anyone for no reason, right? And Pat Cummins has underlined his worth to the team in multiple ways. Forget about keeping it a happy dressing room part. Tactically, in the final, he was brilliant. He rose to the occasion and emerged as the pick of. He just outshone Stark and Hazelwood both in the final with the ball. Big deal.
yeah.
He has been consistent right through the tournament. And with the bat, twice he was required to do something that is not his character. And on both occasions, he put on those vital runs or faced those crucial number of balls to see the team through. And that Afghanistan game, had Pat Cummins not kept on being in Maxwell's ears, he would have retired, possibly. It had to be Pat Cummins the leader, more than Pat Cummins the friend, to actually see Maxwell through that crucial phase and seal the semi-final berth for Australia with a game in hand. The one last thing I want to add, having had those series of injuries in the first half of his career, he knew when a player says I'll be fit, when the medical team says XYZ will be fit at a given point in time, Pat Cummins as the leader is bound to take their word and is bound to actually empathize with the cricketer, right? So Travis had coming good in the latter half after being nowhere close to being in India also, let alone being in the 11th for most of the first half.
Yeah.
It was remarkable for him actually helping Australia's turnaround in a big way. And I feel Cummins would have played some role in that aspect as well.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, when we talk about leaders, we always expect them to be front and center, but behind the scenes, what Cummins did with Maxwell perfectly embodies what kind of leadership he brings to that Australian side. And it was absolutely, I mean, even if you're an Indian fan, you couldn't hate him. This was in 2003 Ponting, right? Where there was a genuine grudge that a lot of us grew up with when it comes to Ponting and that final. But I don't think any of us came away from the final on November 19th with ill will for Pat Cummins. In fact, he was cheered when he came up for the trophy presentation, even though there were not many people left in the stadium as well. So absolutely chuffed for him when it comes to the Australian hierarchy. But Amol, if you had to look at 3 standout things, these could be positive or negative for you. But if you could look at 3 standout aspects of both these teams, what would they be in terms of their campaigns in this World Cup?
Okay. Quite as in I would possibly be able to have all 3 in common, at least 2 of them. One is the dominant run. India were dominant from the start till the final. Okay. Except the final, they were extremely dominant. Australia did not let that winning touch go once they found it in the third game. The second aspect is the leadership. We have spoken in detail about it. Rohit Sharma and Pat Cummins heads down, as in if anyone has to pick a leader for the team of the tournament, Rohit Sharma will be the captain for most of those teams, because Pat Cummins cannot find a place as a player in that team of the tournament. Otherwise, there's hardly anything to choose between the two. And the third aspect that I found interesting, possibly may differ about both the units, is one, the role that pace bowlers play. Zampa was expected to do well, he did. So did Jadeja and Kuldeep. But the revelation for these two teams was its three-pronged pace attack. Okay. That for me was a standout feature, because I don't remember watching a World Cup with two teams having three pacers in such stupendous form right through the tournament, although not all three of them ended up playing all of its team's games. Still, it was phenomenal.
Right, absolutely. As a final question, Amol, this is something that everybody is talking about, right? Whenever India and an ICC tournament are involved, and when a loss comes along, everyone talks about what is it about India that has so many stars, so many proven performers who then come and fumble in a final. What about that mental aspect of it is India not acing?
I just hope that India is not counted in the same breath as South Africa come these big matches now. Okay.
That was that was one of the things we were discussing actually yesterday in the newsroom. Where I mean, there have been too many instances now to not use the C word, isn't it?
Yes, yes. Yesterday's match, anyone could have used the C word because they were not that at their best, right? So I don't know. Maybe they'll need a Glenn Maxwell like spark in some knockout game in the near future to get over that tag.
But on a team level, I mean, the Indian team has had instances of bringing up mental conditioning coaches. Paddy Upton's had a very long association with this side. In fact, with Rahul Dravid particularly, he had come at a time when people were heavily questioning his form. This was maybe the last 2-3 years of his career. Worked extensively with him specifically. Are you privy to maybe what mental conditioning is happening in the Indian team, and perhaps if there is any talk of getting that to a step higher, perhaps?
Not at the moment, at least. But see, from Rahul Dravid's era as a player to the current generation, everyone is aware about an individual's mental health, at least at the highest level of professional sport in India. So most players do seek help as and when they require. As a team, to help them cross the line, if an initiative has to be taken, it has to be taken by the new head coach or the administrators. And now I think that Champions Trophy is too short a tenure. I think, or maybe they'll have to rope in a consultant who will spend considerable amount of time with the bunch leading into the next World Cup. So I think right now it would be premature to discuss it. Possibly post 2025 Champions Trophy would be the way to go about it if the administrators are serious, or if what we perceive as the last hurdle issue has been diagnosed internally within the Indian cricket ecosystem.
Got it. I mean, this is an issue that's pan-genders in Indian cricket particularly. We've had the same issue happening with Harmanpreet as well, where she's also spoken about needing maybe a consistent mental conditioning presence in the team. What kind of shape that takes with the men's team is something that we'll have to wait and find out. I know I said last question, a question back, but I have to ask you this because you said new head coach, right? We've seen VVS Lakshman step in whenever Rahul Dravid has taken a break, or when he's been like when there is something happening and then there's a parallel team that traveled, and then when they had to go up, even for the Asian Games, he also now oversees things at the NCA, which is similar route to which Dravid also made his way before getting into the under-19 setup and all of that. If at all the Indian think tank decides to go to VVS Lakshman, do you think that would be premature as well, perhaps?
I see Dravid and Lakshman as two sides of the same coin. Okay, so if head is not around, I would be surprised if tail also stays on. Okay.
Fair enough. All right. Now, what these decisions are, what happens in Indian cricket over the next couple of days, I'm sure by the end of this week itself, we'll have a lot of information. Do keep track of all of that on Sportstar. Amol and a whole bunch of our cricket reporters will be on the Indian cricket scenario 24/7 and to see what happens in the rest of the world as well. We've got cricket coming up very, very soon. So for all your updates, please head over to the Sportstar website. We will be back again when India decides to take to the field. Until then, take care and join us soon.